Speaking of Apollo 11, 50 years ago tomorrow, it blasted off from Earth on its historic mission to the moon. All this week, we're celebrating that accomplishment and where we've come since in a series of stories and interviews. Today, we look at some of the legendary figures of the Apollo mission. Charlie Duke was the voice on the radio talking to the astronauts as Flight Director Gene Kranz led mission control during the lunar landing. And above the moon, Michael Collins piloted the Apollo 11 command module while his fellow astronauts walked on the moon's surface. Mark Strassmann spoke with all three. He's at Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex in Florida. Mark, does it look the same as you imagined it did 50 years ago?
Well, that's what I want to talk about here, Anthony. I mean, I'm standing underneath a Saturn V rocket. This is the type that launched Apollo 11's crew to the moon. And I mean, seriously, would you take a look at how big it is? 363 feet long. That's taller than the Statue of Liberty, and the most powerful machine ever built. And riding on top was a lunar lander just like this one that brought the first men to the moon.
Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
When the Saturn V rocket roared to life, the Apollo 11 mission soared into history.
Apollo 11, everything going well for a landing on the moon.
NASA's doers and dreamers sent 3 moon explorers, astronauts Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins.
The three of us were just a tip of a gigantic technological iceberg, if you will.
Collins, now 88, told us at liftoff, Apollo 11's crew felt G-force pressure and more.
We felt the weight of the world on our shoulders. Everyone was looking. We were worried that we were going to screw something up.
No wonder. The whole world was watching. American pride was also on the line.
The president is now looking inside the Mercury capsule
to achieve a goal set by President Kennedy 8 years earlier.
Before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth.
After a 3-day trip, the moon landing broadcast live drama 240,000 miles back to Earth.
Capcom, we're go for undocking.
Collins stayed behind in the command module as Armstrong and Aldrin descended to the moon's surface. But their lunar lander's autopilot was sending them toward a crater.
And it was a very large crater.
As Armstrong told Ed Bradley in 60 Minutes in 2005.
Steep slopes on the crater covered with very large rocks about the size of automobiles. That was not the kind of place I wanted to try to make the first landing.
5.5 pounds.
Armstrong, flying manually, had to improvise. He had roughly 1 minute of fuel to find a safe place to land.
60 seconds.
Legendary flight director Gene Kranz was in charge at Houston's Mission Control.
Because it's like driving your car with the gas gauge reading empty.
The tension was through the roof.
Charlie Duke, also in Mission Control, was the man telling Armstrong he was flying on fumes.
Tension you could see, tension you could feel.
More dead silent. I'd never heard Mission Control so quiet. So that tension, it was palpable. You could feel it.
Armstrong finally spotted smooth terrain.
30 seconds.
And we finally landed with, nobody knows exactly how much fuel. Some estimates have it at 20 seconds.
Engine stop. We copy you down, Eagle.
What?
Okay, we're going to be busy for a minute. Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
Charlie Duke was now speaking to the first men on the moon.
Roger, Tranquility. We copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot.
The significance of what he had just done of piloting this thing into this landing over these significant problems that they'd had on the descent was remarkable.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
So remarkable, almost everyone alive today has seen these grainy images. Earth's first 2 moonwalkers. 600 million people back on Earth watched them, transfixed.
It really, to me, brought the U.S. together and was very significant.
Especially given the turmoil of that decade.
Right.
Okay, Houston, I'm going to change lenses on you.
It's still hard for me to believe that we've been there. We did that. We accomplished that.
Beautiful view. Isn't that something?
Armstrong and Aldrin spent almost a day on the surface. The dust they kicked up left them covered in lunar mystique.
Apollo 11 should be on main chutes now.
Armstrong died in 2012, but his name never will.
It's a brilliant surface in that sunlight, predominantly gray. It's an interesting place to be. I recommend it.
What's old is new again for NASA. The new mission is to put more men and the first women on the moon. The goal is 2024. But the program is years behind schedule, has had billions in overruns. And Tony, all of that proves once again how difficult and how significant that first moon landing really was.
Yeah, that's right, Mark. I'm rooting for him. Walter Cronkite was rooting back in 1969.
I was getting nervous watching it all over again. I remember being nervous 50 years ago, but just watching it again.
So President Nixon's speechwriters actually prepared a speech in case they were unable to get back from the moon. Those who went to explore the moon in peace will rest there in peace was the line that was never used. It was dicey.
But they never had to use it.
Walter Cronkite, one of the most unflappable men in the history of broadcast, just takes the glasses off and says, wow. Nice commentary. I'll take that. On CTM tomorrow, I will be at Kennedy Space Center to cover the Apollo 11 anniversary. We'll also bring you an interview with astronauts on board the International Space Station. And CBS News will air a special report to mark the moment Apollo 11 blasted off 50 years ago. That's tomorrow around 9:30 Eastern. 9:32 is when the liftoff was. 8:30 Central, right here on CBS.